I'm afraid to fail. I can't try this new product. It may not sell. How do you know? Until you get it on the shelf. What drives inertia is fear. Our brain is a computer. It's neuroplasticity is what it's called. Basically, the idea that this computer comes pre-packaged with a set of patterns, but we can change those patterns with adaptation, with practice, with repetition. We can change the way we respond. Technology has accelerated change. That change has accelerated fear. We're all running around afraid of things we don't really need to be afraid of. You can have the best strategy in the world, and if your team can't understand it, they'll never execute it. Since when is America a victim? Since when is our company a victim? That fear is turning into perception rather than perspective, and those perceptions are triggering anger, resistance, fight or flight, nonsense. I never lose. I never ever lose. I win or I learn.
Welcome to the Culture from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. In a business world where employees and customers crave authenticity and trust, hosts Larry Levine and Darrell are on a mission to find and showcase heart-centered executives and the companies they lead. You are about to hear an inspiring conversation with a visionary leader that's bringing heart into the workplace, empowering employees, serving their clients, and uplifting communities, all to create true success. This is Culture from the Heart. The movement starts here. Let's begin.
Welcome to Culture from the Heart. I'm your co-host, Darrell, here today with Larry Levine, and we're joined in the studio by James Keyes, former CEO of Blockbuster and 7-Eleven, and also author of the book, Education is Freedom. James, welcome to Culture from the Heart. It's awesome to have you here.
It is great to be with you.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate you.
Sure.
Yeah, as we get started, the question we ask every guest on the Culture from the Heart podcast is, what does Culture from the Heart mean to you?
I'll tell you what it means. It means the importance of developing the human element, especially in an age of information technology. There's a lot of discussion about AI and how it's going to conquer the universe and eliminate jobs and maybe eat us all at the end of the day. And the reality is that there's an antidote to it, because you see, technology will always go very deep in any kind of knowledge, any kind of information. But there's one thing that technology will never have, and that's heart. So that's our competitive advantage as humans, to be able to leverage our culture from the heart, especially in an age of information and advancing technology.
You know, I'm really glad you brought up this human development part of this, because so often we see in the world that Darrell and I hang out in is people hide behind technology. And when you hide behind technology at a company level, it's hard to bring what I call the people skills and the relationship building skills to the forefront that you need to eventually connect at a heart level. So I say let's step in front of technology. Would you agree?
Oh, no, absolutely. In fact, it takes most people, it took me my entire career to recognize the most valuable resource of any company, any country, ultimately, is the human resource. It's not the assets. It's not the raw earth minerals. It is ultimately the human resource that separates us from others. And it will be that human resource that manages technology indefinitely into the future. And the reason for that, and this is what everybody, including me for much of my career, missed, are those soft skills that the human has, that is an extension of the heart. But let's say, compassion, empathy, curiosity, character, all of these things that, try as we will, we're not going to have machines with heart.
I think is interesting, Jim, if you think about all the advances in technology over the last couple hundred years, from, factory automation and then the information age and all of these things. And now we're in this new emerging age of AI and wherever that's going to go with this. It seems like what's happened at every stage is it's kind of boiled down the essence of what it means to bring humanity into the workplace. At every stage, it's gotten narrower and narrower. And it seems like we're in this era right now where it's just another level of filtering down to the true essence of what it means to be human.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true. And, there are a lot of changes that will happen with technology. And we tend to look at the negative. I've got an expression that I've been using. I put in my book, my recent book, but I talk about change a lot, and that change equals opportunity. And if you think about change equals opportunity, the acronym CEO it's really what it's all about, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so true. Mm-hmm. All commerce begins and ends with something changing. So now what does that mean for humanity? Could it mean that there are fewer jobs? Potentially. But could it mean that humanity becomes more effective, more efficient, can produce more? Perhaps we actually have more time to be human and do things that we enjoy doing rather than, spending our entire life working, as I know I did and previous generations had to do. So that element, if we can really channel that idea that this is what separates us from machines, but it's also what may be enabled by machines. Maybe we have more opportunity to expand our humanity and our heart, if you will.
I really like this change equals opportunity because it for some reason, we get stuck, a lot of us, on this whole change aspect because change is scary and change is fearful. But if we look at this through the lens of change provides opportunities that we may not have had prior.
Exactly. Larry, I've got an advantage. I grew up in a circumstance that many would characterize as, what do you want to call it? Underprivileged, dirt poor, whatever you want to call it, right? But it turned out that all of those changes that happened to me as a child ended up creating the guy I am today. The resilience, the determination, the independence, the agency that I have recognized. Nobody's going to do this for me. I have to do it myself. So all of that change, I turned into opportunity every step of the way. My first job was flipping burgers at McDonald's. My first career, if you will, 7-Eleven, ended up being bankrupt. And you know what? That catastrophic demise, if you will, of 7-Eleven in 1991 ended up being the best thing for the company. It forced us into reinventing ourselves. Today, there's 90,000 stores, wildly successful. It's one of the largest chain operations worldwide. And it also, for me personally, ended up being an opportunity that perhaps wouldn't have come. Could I have become CEO in a 15-year spread by the time I entered the company to being named CEO in a wildly successful company? Perhaps not. In a broken company, in a company in the midst of a bankruptcy and having to reinvent itself, I got it to sit in a seat that I never would have had the opportunity to sit in. Be chief financial officer of a public company is something that I probably couldn't have done in a successful company. And yet I was able to because of the change that occurred. You know what the difference is, though? 90% of the people, when they encounter catastrophic change, personally, professionally, they put their head down. They become the victim. They let others tell them how bad that circumstance is. Because of the way I perhaps grew up, I said, what are they going to do? Take my house? They already did. I'm fine. I got this. And while everybody else was licking their wounds and feeling like a victim in that circumstance, I said, no, there's an opportunity in here. I'm going to go chase it. And there was.
What a powerful perspective. Well, don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we'll continue this great conversation with Jim Keys. Let's be honest, finding the right people and building the right culture, that's the holy grail for every leader.
That's why we recommend Titus Talent, because they don't just fill seats. They help you build teams that thrive.
With their partnership plans, you get more than just hiring help. you get a committed team by your side that helps you attract top performers and retain them.
They bring strategy, data, and a human touch to talent optimization. No guesswork, just results.
So if you're ready to invest in your people and create a culture where everyone wins, head over to culturefromtheheart.com/talent to learn more.
That's culturefromtheheart.com/talent. Your culture is your competitive advantage. Design it with Titus Talent.
Welcome back to Culture from the Heart. We're in the studio with Jim Keyes, former CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster. Jim, what a story, what a journey along the way. You were sharing before the break the opportunities that unfolded for you out of adversity inside 7-Eleven. And I think this perspective of change equals opportunity is so powerful. How else have you seen this play out in your experience over the years?
Countless times. I could give you so many examples, and we see it all around us, but usually we focus on the failures. But if you think about every, and this is the big part of it, because fear is what the obstacle is to people adopting the change. And yet we have nothing to fear in failure. Michael Jordan has this great example of how many shots he's missed in his career, how many game-winning shots were bouncing off the rim, and he didn't make them. Yet he learned from every failure that he had, every mistake that he had, and kept improving and improving and improving. It's countless examples. Nelson Mandela has an expression I've embraced and I love. He said, "I never lose. I never, ever lose. I win or I learn." And if we can channel that ability to learn from mistakes, because we will always make mistakes, we're human. If we're making the best decisions we can based on the best information we have at that time, and we still are not successful, it doesn't matter as long as we learn from that, because that's ironically our learning zone. We don't learn from those things that are easy. We don't learn from those things that, make us feel good and we win. We learn from those hard lessons that can occur at any time. So that's to me, it's a huge secret to success, to be able to channel the strength of failure, the strength of not succeeding, and turn it into a lesson and turn it into a learning that will create opportunity from change.
Oh, I like this whole conversation around learning, because I think at a leadership level, especially at a CEO level, Jim, this is why I believe that as leaders, if we can create cultures of learning, that's where the growth's going to occur. I think that's where the sustainability inside the company is going to occur, is every day, what is it that we can learn to help us become even better?
Exactly. Larry, the name of my book, I'll show you a copy of it. The name of my book is Education is Freedom. I put this out. I had a lot of people say, "Oh, what a dumb name." That's just, sounds like it's a book for kids or something. No. The biggest audience, I'll be in Ghana in 2 weeks talking to 25,000 entrepreneurs who are hungry for the correlation between constant lifelong learning and business success, because it truly comes down to, I've been characterized, and a lot of people say, "Well, what do you define as leadership then?" Well, leadership is about learning, because the prerequisite to being able to adapt to change is to be able to learn and to be able to gather information and to make the most informed decision. But the reality is, because change is inevitable, that learning has to keep going. It has to continue, because what I knew yesterday won't apply to tomorrow's change. We'll learn a whole new set of facts.
Powerful. And as you think back over the tenure as CEO of the organizations you led, how did that play out inside the organizations, this idea of a culture of learning? What were you aiming towards?
Well, this was an opportunity. So I didn't grow up saying, "Yeah, I think I want to go be a retailer." I don't know anybody who does, right? I want to be a rocket scientist. I want to be an astronaut. No, I want to go. I want to go be a retailer and sell stuff. It's just not so sexy. But retail is at the forefront of change. And if you think about convenience retail, it's even more so. because let me give you a great example. You're walking down the street in New York, and the guy's selling the fake handbags, on the sidewalk, and he's got them all laid out, the Gucci's and the Louis Vuittons and all that stuff that he bought cheap from China, and he's selling them, and they're all fake. And all of a sudden, one drop of rain falls. What happens? No problem. A blanket covers up all those fake handbags, and out come the umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's an entrepreneur. This is business 101 I've never heard a class in business school teach adaptation to change as well as that one example. Because that's commerce. Something changed. What am I going to do? Not eat this afternoon? No. I'm going to replace the handbags with umbrellas because I'm going to satisfy someone's convenience need now. And that is retail. And now, if you think about the convenience store, tomorrow's weather may be different today. The customer's needs tomorrow on a cold, rainy day are going to be for maybe soup instead of a sandwich. I've got to be able to adapt to that change. I got to see it coming, prepare my inventory, and be ready to satisfy that convenience need. So I ended up in a business that is hypersensitive to change. And I saw firsthand that what drove 7-Eleven into a bankruptcy situation in 1991 was its inability to change. It had grown big, and with size comes inertia. What drives inertia is fear. I'm afraid to fail. I can't try this new product. It may not sell. How do you know till you get it on the shelf? And so I was able to, at a very young age in my career, understand the critical importance of change and embracing change. And thankfully, I had the perfect background for it. So I just became this champion of change being opportunity.
Oh, this is so good because you hit this head on. Is so many of us have this fear of failure. What happens if this doesn't work? And so forth. We're always, regardless if you're a solo entrepreneur or an employee inside of a company, it's all the stories that swirl in our head. Boy, if I do this and it doesn't go right, something bad's going to happen. As opposed to if I did do this and something positive came out as, oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is the single biggest killer of careers. It's people worrying about what's going to happen. I could give you countless stories of how the tribe, the pack, will deflate your entrepreneurism. I mean, I call myself a corporate entrepreneur. It's an oxymoron because it doesn't exist. You think about the corporation is built to come together as one, many people. And an entrepreneur is out there individually being a performer. Well, when an individual puts their head out and they become an outlier, the Australians call it the tall poppy syndrome. Tall poppies get lopped off, right? And that's what happens in the corporate world. Oh, man, old Bob over there, man, he's making us look bad. He's working hard. He's staying late. He's taking crazy risks. And they get discouraged. And so what happens is, instead of each of us having our own identity and each of us having the courage to do whatever's right for the company, in spite of what our friends and our associates may say, we then conform to the pack. We fall into the tribe. We seek safety in numbers. This is happening in our country right now. If you think about it, we're tribally moving to the left or right. And while 90% of us are probably in the center, we end up being somewhat tribal out of fear. I don't want to be the outlier. I'm going to go think what my friends think and say what they say and vote the way they vote. And so we've become polarized, where the reality is that so much of what we're going through as a company or as a country is the same thing that companies go through. Technology has accelerated change. That change has accelerated fear. We're all running around afraid of things we don't really need to be afraid of. And that fear is turning into perception rather than perspective. And those perceptions are triggering anger, resistance, fight or flight nonsense. And we're not. What we're not doing is using our very human ability to channel our prefrontal cortex instead and use critical thinking and seek truth, because ultimately that's the answer. And again, this applies to your personal life, applies to your corporate life, it applies to your citizenship and your country, because fear can be the killer of all three.
Mm.
But it's curable. It's curable.
All right. Well, we'll get to that in the next segment. Thanks for listening to Culture from the Heart. We'll be right back to this great conversation with Jim Keys.
For many CEOs, sales feels like a black box.
You've got visibility into marketing metrics, financial dashboards, operational KPIs. But when it comes to the sales team, it feels like guesswork.
That black box, it's costing you, because if you can't see what's happening, you can't fix what's broken or fuel what's working.
That's where the Sales Index steps in. It opens the black box of sales and shows you the real story. Who's thriving, who's struggling, where they need help, and how much revenue is being left on the table.
You'll get clear, actionable data on sales behavior, mindset, and team culture, so you know exactly where to invest and how to drive growth.
So stop flying blind. Go to salesindex.ai and mention Culture from the Heart for 10% off an index of your sales team.
Sales Index, because when sales stops being a black box, you start unlocking real sales results.
Welcome back to Culture from the Heart. Jim, right before the break, you said something that was so powerful to every leader out there. Technology accelerates change, and change causes fear. I think this is true in every organization. This may be the preeminent issue that leaders face right now. What would you say to leaders who are leading their organizations through this time of C-level change?
I've got a formula that I've found successful in my career. I call it my gift, that I share with others, whoever will listen, because I think it's critically important, especially in a time of change, aggressive change, rapid change. I call it my 3 C's, if you will: change, confidence, and clarity. Because the reality is change is inevitable. There's nothing we can do about what happens in the macro environment. It's going to happen. Good economy, bad economy, brand new technology breakthrough. It's going to happen. There is everything we can do about our response to that change. We forget that. We get intimidated by the external environment. We become the victim. We start blaming each other. You know, hey, look at that. I can blame both of you with one move.
Hey, there you go.
And that's what happens. And we get caught up. Since when is America a victim? Since when is our company a victim? But we're vulnerable to that as humans. So what's the antidote to being a victim? It's that confidence thing. And here's the gap. Confidence can be learned. Confidence isn't something I thought for many years, old Bob, he's confident, old Mary, she's confident. No, confidence comes through preparation. Confidence you can actually reprogram your mind. If you wonder why a pilot up front in the cockpit isn't afraid of turbulence, it's because they've gotten over that fear. They have reprogrammed their brain not to panic when the airplane hits a little bit of turbulence. And that ability to reprogram your mind to eliminate fear through knowledge is real. It's real. So confidence is critical for a leader to be able to know what's truly a threat and what's not a threat and be able to manage through it. And then third thing is, this is so important, clarity, because in a time of complexity, in a time of change, things get really complicated, especially technological change. Oh my gosh, what's AI going to do? Do I even understand the implications of AI, right? So we get intimidated by the complexity of a situation when it's really the simplicity that will ultimately save us. To be able to take very complex things, break them down into simple terms. The best way I can describe it for clarity is truly listening, truly seeking truth, as having critical thinking rather than stopping short at your perceptions. and instead using your full mind and getting the best information you can. And then also external clarity. So the ability to communicate effectively, because you can have the best strategy in the world, and if your team can't understand it, they'll never execute it. We're all guilty of overcomplicating everything. So those three things, I call them the antidote, or the key, if you will, to unlocking change equals opportunity. It's embrace the change, go after it, full force. It's an opportunity in there. I'm going to find it. Having the confidence to do something about it, not letting other people tell you what you can and can't accomplish. And then third is having the clarity of simplification, inbound, listening, and externally through communicating. Those three things, there's nothing to fear. We can accomplish absolutely anything.
Oh, I like this. I'm going to throw in another C word, Jim, is in the absence of this, it creates chaos. And then I'm going to go back to this clarity because I'm a high clarity guy. I think a lot of the chaos, and again, this is just my take on this, I'd be curious your thoughts, is I think a lot of the chaos and the fear and the misunderstandings inside companies today has to do with lack of clarity, lack of a clear vision and a simple message that's been delivered from the top down.
It is. I at both 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, I adopted a practice that I saw Sam Walton do. Because if you think about the layers of management, this is where companies develop inertia. I found at 7-Eleven, there were 12 layers of management between me and the store as CEO and a store operator. Well, that's 12 opportunities to misinterpret what the plan really is. And so Sam used to bring everybody into Bentonville once a week from all over the country. They had a small air force of small planes that would fly all of his field operations team in. And every Saturday, we'd listen to Sam from probably 30 years talk about what the priorities are for this week. So I copied that, and I established a nationwide telecom network for 7-Eleven. We eventually evolved into a video conference, which today would be like we are doing right now via Zoom. And what we did is I would stand up every Tuesday and outline for the entire field operation, here are 3 priorities for this week. If you do nothing else this week, here's a new product that I want promoted. Here is a pricing thing that we've got to execute, blah, blah, blah. And then I could go to any store in the country and say, hey guys, what's the priority this week? And hopefully they would say 1, 2, 3. Not 100% of the time, but I cut through a lot of clutter in doing so.
Incredible wisdom. Well, Jim, as we wrap up this conversation, education is freedom. Congratulations on the publication of your book. Tell us a little bit about the book, what your heart is for this book.
Yeah, well, let me speak to this heart thing, because the education is freedom captures what I would characterize as meta skills. What are meta skills? Well, in school, we can learn engineering, we learn math, we learn science, we learn all these technical skills. But in order to pick up leadership skills, this idea of embracing change and seeing it as opportunity, the idea of confidence being something we can actually practice and learn. I mean, our brain is a computer. It's neuroplasticity is what it's called. Basically, the idea that this computer comes prepackaged with a set of patterns, but we can change those patterns with meditation, with practice, with repetition. We can change the way we respond to stimulus. So these skills, which are skills, they're not just soft, fuzzy, warm, fuzzy things. They are things that can be managed. And let me give you one of the more important ones that I didn't reference: character. I tell people, we all have a brand. We're just like a product on the shelf. It could be Cheerios versus Fruit Loops, right? And what's on the cover of the box is pretty important. The packaging, it's always going to be important. But what's really important, what's most important, is what's inside. And each of us forgets that we have to differentiate ourselves from all other employees, companies that we're working with, et cetera, et cetera. And what do you want when you look at a package on the shelf? You want a packaging that you can trust, but what's inside is really important. And that character, integrity, humility, gratitude, those things that make us human will ultimately be, I think, the big differentiator between the success of machine language and the success of human learning. It can elevate at an exponential rate by embracing machine language, but the machine will never have a culture of the heart.
Oh, so good.
Beautiful. Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your time, your stories, and your heart with us today. This has really been incredible.
Appreciate the opportunity. I am excited about the future. The future is absolutely bright. And as my book says, the future is in your hands. I'd modify that for you guys. The future's in your heart.
Oh, it's so good.
Here,
Thanks,
here.
Jim.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. What an incredible conversation. Change equals opportunity. And all of it lives at the level of the heart. There's so much gold in this conversation with Jim. So thankful to get to share this time with him today.
You know, absolutely. And I would encourage all of us, embrace change. I know it's difficult, whether that be at a leadership level or at an individual level. Embrace the change, but wake up every day with a learning mindset. Watch what starts to happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you to everyone for joining us this week. Thank you to those of you who are nominating your CEO. If you know a leader of an organization, maybe it's your own organization that is just bringing heart into the workplace and creating an amazing culture, we'd love to talk to them. Just go to culturefromtheheart.com, click on nominate your CEO, and maybe they'll be on an upcoming episode. Thanks again for joining us today. What an incredible conversation with our friend, Jim Keys. Culture from the Heart, we believe that culture is the heartbeat of every organization. And as Jim has reminded us, change equals opportunity. So thank you for joining us today. Until next time, lead with your heart and watch your culture thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover heart-centered leaders shaping extraordinary company cultures. To access a leader guide with notes from this week's episode, simply click the link in the show notes or visit us at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Do you know a CEO who's built a culture from the heart? We'd love to hear their story. Head over to www.culturefromtheheart.com and click the Nominate Your CEO button. Until next time, remember, great cultures start with the heart.